Book conclusion. Subjective, objective, omnijective. Objective, subjective isn't the whole of the appearance of things. The life of us, with all of its perceptions, is more nearly omnijective, or dimensions of perspective within dimensions, much as point, line, and plane are dimensions within one another, and all included subjectively within, or from, the sphere's universal point of view. To use that analogy, imagine all points of view to infinity happening simultaneously. The point of view of the point perceives itself, point, subjectively, and all other points that make up lines of thought as objective, as out there. But to the line, all points of itself are subjectively within my consciousness, and all other lines and their points are out there. Lines that intersect have a common and subjective something akin, like people who have common interests. The plane, even a plane of thought, perceives its own inner nature of lines as within, and all other planes as objectively external. In addition, it sees itself joined with each of them at whatever their lines of intersection. The plane finds itself related to all planes at the subjective juncture, like a common life existing between them, making them one at that line. The sphere perceives all these points of view, lines of thought and planes of thinking subjectively as its own functioning going on. I do not know why the feeling of a cosmic body comes to mind every time I pursue this line of thought, but it does. I get a consistent intuitional picture, a deific body of consciousness with which I interface at the level of awareness, conscious and unconscious. It is as if my little point of objective view, body, is like a life cell circulating within the body, human peregrinations being but an examination of and function of the deific body. I am not the only one whom this parallel has occurred. There is a discussion of these ideas in the mysticism of Judaism. My developing subjectivism somehow touches, I almost said encompasses, the whole of deity's nature, albeit that whole being seems past understanding, such that it can't quite make sense to the point, line, or plane's perspective. What I formerly perceived as my out there world is a reflection of my own withinness, that inner world and its reflection interfacing at the point of awareness I am. The point makes its own world, so to speak. It's out there, reflecting all possibilities from the ridiculous to the sublime, and only a portion of those possibilities actually real. I have an intuitive feeling that death is not only unreal, but merely a progression along this linear way in time, from point to line to plane, and so on. The cell, to use that analogy, perishes within the stream of life, but the stream is enriched by the cell's temporal and finite existence. But what is really happening is not so mortal as that. Whatever consciousness of the stream which the cell becomes aware of before its move from temporal cell to its greater nature continues and expands enormously as the stream's awareness. Now, the stream of life, every man has intimations of its greater dimension, even as now I have intimations, maybe more than intimations, of things for which there are no words, only overtones. In this way, I perceive my omnijective awareness to be in the hands of omnidimensional and no-dimensional Godhead forevermore. This awareness I am, and the reader is the perception of the divine mind. As that perception, I am charged to be an honest observer, a faithful witness, not a perpetual judge of good and evil. This, I understand, is why the universe forever appears as qualities and attributes of something greater. That something I choose to call Godhead or Deity. Additionally, this explains how and why one is brought to understand that these qualities and attributes are not Godhead itself, but what Godhead knows itself, its qualities, its characteristics, and attributes to be. Overmind, knowing itself. Overmind, knowing what knowing is. Thence, to account for the points, lines, and planes viewing of evil. Overmind, knowing what it is not and could never be. The correlation that explains the appearances of an unreal, powerless evil or error in the world. This awareness, or call it life, is knowing going on. When I identify as the one who owns awareness, i.e., as the possessor of knowing, the owner of life, I cannot distinguish between is and is not. When I end my enthralldom with the pseudo-possessor's beliefs, I know as nearly as possible as I am known, and find myself intuitively aware of which is wheat and which are tares, even why the need for such an apparent dualism. There has never been a real possessor of awareness other than ineffability, Godhead, isness, truth. Yet, in order that awareness be aware that awareness is not the whole of God, but less, or in order for awareness to know beyond the limit of intellectualism, it does, for a necessary time, the duration of its own making, struggle diligently to believe it is God. That struggle marks the upper limit of the human experience, transpiring only in its own time and measure of eternity for the purpose of rediscovering the child within. Bottom line here, the human experience is theology's necessary descent into hell, is not's, that allows us to rediscover, thence know beyond human frailty and its intellectualism, the divine nature of being. The ultimate simplicity of it is boggling. How would any of us have known what the light of the sun is without suffering the long emptiness of the dark night? Who would know what security, peace, health, joy, beauty, or anything else really is had he not tangled with the chimeral, contradistinguatory opposites. We left the child in childhood in order to rediscover it and know its reality and dominion. We live the appearances of death in order to know the eternal nature of life. About identity in the light of sphere. In the mind's eye, I see the infinite sphere and its self-awareness, two that are one. At its very center, I see the point of light, the infinite sphere's spiritual image and likeness, pure, perfect, and immaterial. Inasmuch as this point's essence has been given life, which is to say is the image of life, the living image sees the images of the qualities and attributes of 1. Infinite sphere, and 2. Infinite sphere's image or self-awareness. That is, the divine man is empowered, 1. To see, to look within himself and perceive the perfect image in toto. His knowledge of identity, and, number 2, to look outside himself at the divine qualities and attributes in their sequential form, separate and apart, intertwined and interrelated. But outside and inside are a single one to sphere. Inside is the image, outside are the images of image, and images of images to infinity. The kingdom of heaven is within. Now understand, outside includes the first image of oneself, the tangible body. That body is finite image of image. Image is the real identity. Body is the first image of that image. Outside includes images of images to forever, but outside is beholden to inside. Dominion was given to image, not the body image. Once, in blind arrogance, I wrote that I had stopped identifying as body image or greater image. I acknowledged God to be all in all without need of images or images. But I was wrong, absolutely wrong. I should have known the lights of the world couldn't have been wrong, every one. Even the word identity means identical. But the identical image is what God knows God to be. This is the twin, and there is no power in the image unless it is given to it by God, exactly as the Christ light said for himself and his view of others. I do not know where my arrogance came from that would deny God the privilege of self-perception, but I lived that attempt. Now I know that deep within, identical image is the light of Godhead, because that is what motivates and directs me. Who is this me that is motivated and directed? It looks like an image of an image called William, but it is the soul of the divine identity, image of God. It is the God view, not the man view. The man view, the image of image view, is compounded of arrogance and ignorance until it is understood and surrendered. Now I see why the Christ light of history and his followers said time and again that one must not love the world but love God. The world is image of the body's images, moving toward the macrocosm, and contain all the compounds that comprise materiality. And that matter is only half substantial, half true, that half rooted in the image of the image. The image of the image is not a lie. It just isn't the image itself, just as the image is not God itself, just as the image is beholden to God. So the body and its actions are beholden to image, the child, the soul of God. Listen gently, reader. Let one not worship image because it is holy, or because it has dominion over everything that creepeth upon the earth, but let one worship the ineffable Godhead. The me-sense point of view may very well be the creator of tangible matter and its forms, not God. The mirror creates the lifeless images within it. Don't call me good, said the light of life. Call no man good. Don't worship me, he said. Worship God. John echoed those words. So did the prophets. Jesus said also that when you see him who was not born of woman, to fall on your knees and worship that one. Image comes to image one day in time, because image is being image in timeless alreadiness. When that one comes, that one brings testimony of Godhead. Jesus heralded that light within one. Mankind has turned this process around to venerate the linear herald light. Yet the historic Jesus identified correctly as that light and said that all mankind who recognized that light within could do the same as he, and more. In my personal experience at this time, the image is breaking through the ignorance and humanity of me more and more frequently, telling me what to do about the world and its images. This seems to be to live the equation in the world, but most especially to be prepared to do something for my images who are given to me in the times ahead, even as I have been faithful to them in the past. As I get this beam out of this eye, the divine alchemy renews this view of the world, not just for me, but for every man. The worldview ending will not be the end of everything, but the conscious presence of everything which is already spread over the face of the land, and the events of a linear history in time will be like the wink of an eye and a dream we dreamt, of images upon images having power when they really didn't. The inner self. It is one thing to read about the inner self, but it is quite another thing to find it. It is one thing to hail the inner self as image of the Supreme, the only truth and identity, but it is another matter entirely to find it. It is one thing to proclaim that naught but reality is going on, but quite another matter to live that reality in the face of unreality, be tested by it, and then find oneself the son of the living God, recipient of the heritage. There are at least 5 pathways to that reality, and metaphysics is only one of them, perhaps the most difficult of them all. Many enter into the door of modern metaphysics, but few get beyond the inclination for study, to flow with the way of wisdom to its end and beginning. Many succumb to the verbal power they find their exercise in the world, the me sense swollen and large, because others think them intelligent. Many enter the door of churchdom and its organizations, but few get beyond the social and intellectual entrapments. Few lift themselves from the words of the Bible to the spirit which the Bible confirms, thence to follow the way of devotion to the peak and the beginning. Many succumb to the authority they entertain or to the social world they enjoy. The church is a comfortable bend in the river where men grow confident in their objective humanness rather than their subjective divinity. Many enter the doors of science, but few find the spirit for which matter exists, the spirit which matter demonstrates and confirms. Many walk the roads of psychology, education, government, businesses, and their enterprises in the world, but few are willing to renounce the world and its riches, or to let go their pride or accomplishments. The right and the left. Han was leaving. It was time to go home, he said. He spoke to the little group for the last time. In the world, the right and left are extremes that come together without realizing it. My right is my arrogance. My left is my ignorance. My arrogance pretends humility, and my ignorance pretends wisdom. They come together and are the mirrored images of one another, like holding my hands behind my back. But, listen, beyond these two, and by far the most important, is the heart between them and superior to them. The inward flow from either hand leads directly to the heart and its perfect balance. The outward flow from the heart leads to the hands, and the hands give to the world. In the world, one hopes for peace between right and left, east and west, rich and poor, young and old, male and female. But permanent peace isn't found at the political or social level of things. Peace is with the child of God, 3 steps beyond government, 2 steps beyond religion, and 1 beyond wisdom of metaphysics. We find the child, we live the child's sweet equation, and are swiftly carried to the top of the mountain. There, the world under our feet, we find the peace that passeth understanding. When we find that peace, our world rushes to confirm it. When our world confirms peace, we have been victorious. Our work isn't done when we reach the peak of Deshan, said Han, almost shouting. Our work is done when we look round about and the world, seeing what we see, has confirmed our understanding and our peace. Will I ever see that day with mortal eyes? The soldier asked. I don't know, the old teacher answered. I don't know. That's up to you. The child enters the world and is found to be wisdom itself. The old man leaves the world whispering, I don't know, I don't know. It is up to you. The balance is untouched by either event. We find the balance and be it. One day we look out and everything confirms Godhead, no matter how it appears to others. Then we understand how it is that these stones shall minister unto thee. Cleave a piece of wood, and behold, I am there. We think truth, and the child's equation flows outward. We think truth, and the child's equation flows inward. We tap our foot and drum our fingers to the rhythm of the flow. For the most part, the church mice leave us alone, but we know what to do about them if they don't. Truth speaks to the child of us directly. The angels and the prophets bring light and life. The role of the child within us. We are watching television, and an unexpected scene brings tears to the eye. The emotions we feel is the child stirring within. Subtly, unnoticed thoughts inward toward the child and outward to the scene at hand combine in stillness to elicit a movement of the child within, and we feel it. What hasn't been common knowledge is that the child lies at the seat of simple, honest emotions that have to do with the tender things, the true things, the good things of the human condition. We see the enthusiasm of a puppy whose whole body wiggles in tail-wagging excitement, its head nuzzling the hands and the feet of a friend. The response we feel from the center of us is the child within confirming that the joy outside is the joy within, one joy. What hasn't been common knowledge is that our empathy comes from the original child of us, the good of us, the eager to prove it is ever here as the real of us. We see something as we round the turn of the pathway and are tinged with some distant nostalgia, a statement within reminding us of a pleasant time in our affairs or a happy place we know. What hasn't been common knowledge is that the seat of feeling within us is the child's domain, and that our response to the unfolding view in fact or in memory is the child's reminder that we are that child, not merely the body that walks the pathway or thunders hell-bent and unthinking through the human experience. We see the sight of dolphins and porpoises playing alongside the ship of life. Suddenly we feel their joy and freedom, their uninhibited playfulness, and we are relieved. What hasn't been common knowledge is that their joy and zest are our joy and zest. If we had not learned what joy is, we would not recognize it in the world. It is the child of us that responds, feeling the same joy and zest, and our body is renewed. What hasn't been common knowledge until now is that it is the living identity of us, the immortal child who is stirring within, telling us it is willing to be up and out and into our affairs, bringing us up and out of the old nature to take us home to the real again. We see two old folks walking slowly hand in hand for their evening stroll. Suddenly, something within us responds. Goodness knows what we feel, but it is very good. It is warm, it is refreshing and delightful. It is in response to the child's lessons learned somewhere along our old man's line of life. But the child is the responder to the scene at hand, telling us that we are not the unfeeling, dispassionate, aging person we thought we were. Rather, we are the child within that doesn't grow old. We live, and we know we live. We are coming back to our senses again. What hasn't been common knowledge before is that we are not the old person looking on the scene at hand, but we are the child, the awareness of God, looking at the subjectivity of Godhead. Sometimes it is the child that dreams our dreams for us, dreams to be thought about a little. It seems to me that some of my dreams do not come from the inmost child of me, but out of my old worldly imbalances, hinting at something for me to unbind in the world I am. Something to forgive, something to forget. But on the mornings when I awaken to the freshness and eagerness, I can be sure the child has been at its work during my sleep, being instructed by the Father of life. Now, ever so slowly, line upon line, in these days at hand, we are becoming aware of the child within as the real of us, the identity that walks hand in hand with God, and we are beginning to let that trustworthy child lead us. The child I am speaks to me and writes these words. Nothing I can write of myself will be worthy of that inner one made in the image of God, but with God's and the child's help, I try. The response one feels to these thoughts and ideas comes certainly from the heart, the child, not at all from the denying nature of the unreal man who ridicules and laughs at the idea of an eternal ongoingness of life. The child laughs too, oh, but how he laughs and claps his hands! But not in derision or hurtfulness. The child laughs in honest confirmation that the heart of us lives and is eternally about the Father's business. From Jeremiah we hear, "And I shall write my law in their inward parts, and write it in their heart, and will be their God, and they shall be my people. They shall teach no more every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord. For they shall know me. They shall all know me, from the least of them unto the greatest of them, saith the Lord. And I will remember their sin no more." Isaiah. "The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the young lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them." Jesus says, "Verily I say unto you, except ye be converted and become as little children, ye shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven." Jesus says, "While ye have light, believe in the light, that ye may be the children of light." Paul says, "Ye are the children of light and the children of day." And again Jesus, "Suffer the little children to come unto me, for such is the kingdom of God." Chung Se says, "It is the child that sees the primordial secret in nature, and it is the child of ourself we return to. The child within us is simple and daring enough to live the secret." Jesus says, "For where the beginning is, there shall be the end." And Paul, "The children of the promise are counted for the seed." And Paul, "We are the children of the promise." And John, "I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in the truth." Who is that child, my friend, if it isn't the one buried beneath the adulthood of yourself? We look for the child, and the child stirs to tell us it lives. We reach for the child, and the child comes running into our gut to respond and say, "I am come." We begin to see small wonders again, the way we saw them as children. We acknowledge these wonders as gifts from God, and lo, they come more frequently. We gird up our loins and dare tell others of the gentle child within them, and our wonders increase and grow apace. We thank God for the child of life by telling our subjective selfhood of the child they are. Imperceptibly, bit by bit, we let the inner child lead us to the right hand and to the left. Imperceptibly, our reliance on external authority gives way to the light of life within ourselves, and we quarrel no longer with any man. Then we see the child in all men, even the arrogant and scornful, even the feeble and sick. As we look for the child in ourselves, we see it in all men and see them coming alive as well. This is to give God what is God's. Understanding time and the end days of time's dominion. Now it is, in these late days, in the ongoingness of mortal life, that the attention of the one who survives will be turned to the child within himself. He will be comforted and profited in his worldly affairs, and in his heart he will grow wealthy. As this child consciousness grows in the world, and as these renewing people communicate with one another around the earth, writing and telling their own glimpses and glimmers of the child's joy, no longer reciting the words of others as proof of their own wisdom, there will be a remarkable, synergistic assembly of feeling within humanity beyond the grandest hope of anyone. Out of this unexpected synergism of light, like a plant sending up a tall stem with a great flower on it, so the world will send up a newness of child people, blooming as a flower of renewed life, just like a fall flower finally coming to bloom in the late days before the frost. After nearly 11,000 years of human time, God's tree of life is coming into bloom. There will be a special joy, joy beyond joy, felt by those who are part of the flower of life, the offspring of Godhead, seed from the original seed. But listen, listen. It is the tree that blooms, not ourselves. Those who are led by the child become the living blossom of life here on earth, a new brotherhood, a new community without leaders or temples, subservient to naught but the child and its source. This flower may be shaken by the laughter and envy and scorn of the incredulous, and assaulted by pseudo-authorities whose power appears to be threatened, but the child is no threat to no one. Before us lies a brief and severe time when the flower is shaken by the wind and the petals seem to be scattered again, and when those who are not holding fast to the inner child's hand will wonder who the real prophets are. But from the flower will come the seed that will be taken up for the reseeding and ongoingness of tangible life. The tree will perish, but the seed will live. How do I know this is so? Because it has been shown to me by the child I am, and I see confirmation of the divine process and its equation in all nature. All one must do to know these things are happening already is to look and see that they are happening. Line upon line now, but soon precept upon precept, more than a little here and a little there. The new community already begins to flower and be seen by every man. First, its fruits of the tree of life, from out of which comes the seed eternal. All tangibility, all dashan, and the life teeming on its slopes is the subjectivity of God, not man. The life that reads these words is the awareness of God, not man. The synergism we feel in the community of our families and most meaningful groups is only a fraction of the divine energy and light of Godhead's life, soon to be felt by those who summon forth the child within and dare to become that child. The downward human spiral of energy that culminates in selfness and the reproduction of human life will turn around to spiral upward and out, bringing with it the incomparable energy of life in its wholeness, joined with the groom. And this joy is yet to be experienced by men and women. It is reserved for the final flowering of life. It begins with the child within. We get busy and we find it. We live the equation, giving and receiving, receiving and giving to all mankind. We write and tell of the child's glimpses because we are ourselves the only ones who can tell our own glimpses of light. They come to us immaculately and individually, and to no one else. We are charged to give them to others. The glimpse contains the pollen of life, and we give it freely. We accept it and pass it along. We live God's equation with joy. As it might be said in the East, the night of Brahman falls as soon as the harvest of the seed is accomplished. The morning of the new day comes quickly. Epilogue. The apple tree bloomed last week. Woodsong's little orchard is an endless delight, especially in the spring. The apple tree bloomed last week. Each bloom opened onto an unobstructed scene and looked roundabout to see the world. Today, most of those blooms have shattered and fallen to the ground. The few that remain no longer have the unobstructed view, but peer out through the new green leaves. The first blossoms saw the world. The last see mostly the leaves of their own branch. The first flush of truth is like the unobstructed opening bloom of spring, unable to see so much. The apple tree's last blooms don't see as far, but listen softly. They produce fruit just as certainly. Could it be that the present days are like the tree, full of complicating, obstructing leaves, like business activity, family responsibilities, government, world argument, self-doubts, fears, and the like? Yes, we look through the leaves of the world. And could it be that we are trying to converse with blossoms surrounded by the complex, complicating world? Yes, but we are still addressing the heart of our selfhood, the child within, the innocent and pure in heart. When I tell my others, myself, of the expansive view, I'm fully aware how the leaves stand before us as distracting, contradictory, and tangible obfuscations. Listen, child heart of myself. Hear of the simplifying open spaces. Hear of the unobstructed spirit. The grand view is just beyond the leaves. After the storm. When the apple tree bloomed last week, it was so proud of itself. Now, after the wind and the rain, its petals lie scattered on the ground. The tree may be tempted to think it has fallen from grace again and is back where it started. But it isn't. It isn't. Why not? Because the fruit follows the bloom, and the fruit contains the seed. Gentle reader, if anywhere along the way you have felt a stirring in yourself While reading this volume, be of good cheer. That was the child blooming again. What follows, inevitably, in your experience, is the fruit and the seed. Postscript. Now the reader is asked to begin rereading Book 1 immediately. Those 12 chapters will become clearer this time, and you may feel that you are reading an entirely new book. With the second reading, the related papers can be read concurrently, as the reader chooses. You are then perceiving your own insightful overtones, determined by your experience, your needs, and your choice of readings. The book will ever be new, and your experience likewise. There are mysteries and secrets contained in these pages, all of them related to the divine imprint already present in the reader's heart.